Good evening, IIA members and all those who have joined the webinar. This webinar is for the purpose of releasing a book authored by 3 people from our IIA India mantle. The book titled, as you know, Artificial Intelligence in Financial Services, a primer for internal audit and fraud detection. This is authored by 3 persons. One is Mr. Raman Narsimhan, other one is Mr. A.R. Parthasarathi, and the third author is Mr. Aditya Kumar. I'll be briefly giving the introduction about the authors. Raman Narsimhan works for Sundaram Finance as head of internal audit. He has substantial audit, forensic and dispute consulting experience for more than 25 years. He has rich experience in anti-money laundering, digital forensics, cyber forensics, per SEBI RBI frameworks, standards, including the information security, privacy, environmental security, etc. He has modeled privacy governance, carried out impact assessments, and advised on the data classification. Prior to joining Sundaram Finance as head of internal audit, Raman was handling forensics practice for South at Grant Thornton. He also had a stint with the TCS and also PwC. With this brief, I would now move on to Mr. A.R. Parthasarathi. He has close to 25 years of experience in advising clients in the areas of enterprise risk management, performance improvement, cost reduction, investigations, and operational reviews. Partha is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. He holds a master's degree in economics. He is a certified information systems auditor, certified internal auditor, certified fraud examiner, and a member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, UK. He is a partner with Mrs. R.G. and Price and Company, a firm of chartered accountants in Chennai. In his prior roles, he was heading the risk advisory practice for PwC in Chennai. Now to Mr. Aditya Kumar. He is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He advises clients on various aspects of financial reporting under multiple gap, control reviews, and other assurance services. He holds a bachelor's degree in commerce. He also holds diploma in information systems audit, certified forensic accounting and fraud detection from ICAI. He is also certificate in international financial reporting and international auditing standards from ACCA UK. So with this brief introduction, in fact, I would like to say the qualifications of Mr. Raman Narsimhan. He is a CISA holder, CISM, CRISC, and also law graduate from Madras Law College, and certified arbitrator and member of the Science and Technology section of the American Bar Association. With this now, I request our IIA India President, Mr. Ramarao, to talk about the book. Afterwards, there will be a fireside chat between the 3 authors about current trends in internal auditing. Over to Mr. Ramarao, please.
Thank you, Vidyadharan. Good evening, my dear viewers and listeners. These days, it feels more like a radio jockey or maybe a video jockey to do some of these, the frequency at which these activities happen. But I have curtailed my instinct after listening to the qualifications of the 3 authors who were introduced by Vidyadharan. We are assembled at a very appropriate moment in IIA's continuum of serving the profession. The 3 professionals who you will meet a little more intimately and shortly have collaborated to share their knowledge and their experience bring out a publication under the aegis of IIA India, AI or artificial intelligence in financial services. I had the opportunity to quickly, maybe that's the advantage of the position that, at least for the moment, I hold. I had the opportunity to quickly run through the book, and I'm particularly happy with not just the content but also the style. I've expressed it also in the foreword that is there in the book. But I must point out that the emphasis on outcome, which is probability based rather than correctness, is a distinction that we as internal audit professionals must appreciate and constantly remind ourselves. It's a little difficult to accept that concept, but if we want to do justice to our profession and to the organization that we serve or we are engaged by, then that distinction must be constantly kept in our mind when we look at artificial intelligence. They have also brought out, of course, the change in mindset about understanding the business, understanding the change in results or outcomes from artificial intelligence at different points of time, etc. The sanctity of data sets that are used by any AI application. And how do we prevent a fraud, which is a step prior to how do we detect. The detection is certainly there, but the emphasis on how to prevent a fraud by moving all our systems to converge on this particular aspect. I love that. The use of precognitives or precogs, as you have mentioned, that are of course AI based and not the psychic one, may lead to a prevention of crime, of at least certain crimes, but there are issues around privacy, probably tricky probability algorithms, maybe regulatory concerns also. Anyway, fraud, as you are all well aware, cannot always be prevented. We need to have robust systems in place to detect fraud, and this is where artificial intelligence is its hand. Insider trading, money laundering, bribery, window dressing, these are perhaps some examples. We could go on with this subject. It is as interesting as it is challenging. But two realities I must bring out. One, the world is digital and will only get more so in time. This much is inevitable. And the second, which is very close to my heart, is that there is nothing to replace the moral compass that each human being carries. There is nothing, no system, no regulation, nothing can replace the moral compass that each one of us carry. It cannot be created, it cannot be violated, it cannot be removed. It can, however, be ignored by us, by that being. And that is perhaps the biggest risk that we carry, that we ignore our moral compass. By the human, even native intelligence can predict the consequences of or impact. The ignoring can happen by the human, not by anyone else. That to realize the consequences does not require artificial intelligence. Even native intelligence is sufficient. That moral compass is what I would like each one of us to preserve and to allow it to bloom, to allow it to speak and to follow. So with these words, I will stop, and my sincere gratitude to Parthasarathy, Raman, and Aditya Kumar for having written this book and brought out all these concepts so wonderfully in their book. All the very best, and thank you very much again. Vidyadharan,
Thank you, Mr.
with you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramarao, for insightful thoughts on the book and on the subject matter as such. Thank you very much once again. I now request Aditya Kumar to take over and conduct the fireside chat. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Ramarao and Mr. Vidyadharan, for such a wonderful introduction. To start with, we would like to have Mr. Raman comment on the prologue that we have given in the book in the form of a story, rather than just diving into the topic.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, sir, Mr. Ramarao, Mr. Vidyadharan, Mr. Tyagarajan. I would thank everyone IIA for this wonderful opportunity. Aditya, you started with a very lovely question with a bang. Why a prologue? Why a kind of storytelling here, right? That is important. The current day, I would say in the digital, am I audible, clear?
Very clear.
Yeah,
Okay.
audible, very clear.
Okay. The current, I would say in the digital age, Intel auditors, we should be kind of purple person, what they call, and polymath, purple person where you can be strong, you can have subject matter expertise, but capability to understand many things. Whether it is, you need not be a techie, but you should be able to understand technology control. There is a key, I would say, requirement in the Intel audit nowadays, right? We can't be just looking at, only finance, F&A, finance and accounting. It is important. Compliance is important, but we don't understand the regulatory requirement, or we don't understand a couple of areas, say on the technology front or disruptive forces through technology or through automation. I think we'll be losing out on the control front. How we are going to, talk to the management, talk to the audit committee. First of all, we need to understand, is that design effectiveness, is that okay? Are we going to strengthen something? Are we suggesting more? Or you say it is, not part of Intel audit. It can't be like that. We need to play a very critical role. Management, right up to board and audit committee, they rely on us. So that is what I would start. I want people to get into what is a purple person or a polymath. Having said that, there are other qualities, like subject matter expertise is one, but at same time, it is good if you try to understand anti-fraud or fraud risk assessment. How you provide a fraud risk heat map. That is a very important subject, because every quarter on quarter, we provide to the board and audit committee what is happening, where the controls, if at all, if people exploit, or if at all, if it is vulnerable, what people can, do something, either you call from inside a threat or from the external threat. So a bit of forensic knowledge to understand where the controls, on the anti-fraud, probably they need to stress upon. I also mentioned in the prologue, you would have seen something called, apart from the regular systems auditor, RPA experts. We are talking about artificial intelligence, and bots play a critical role. We are talking about cybersecurity and encryption. So who else can do than cryptanalysts? If we are talking about a big bank or a big NBFC or a mutual fund, whatever, the cryptanalyst should give you a kind of confirmation how it is happening there, how secure we are. It is not just a cybersecurity audit alone on a VAPT exercise that can provide you assurance. So there could be other teams involved. Aditya, it is what we thought initially, like you would know the background of the story when we created together. It is something like we require people from different teams. Like, I was talking about NLP, right? Natural language processing, or kind of apart from RPA, whatever additional like subject matter expertise we can include. Together, we require three elements. One is, how we can assure our financial service organization, how we can anticipate the risk. If we can't anticipate as the internal auditor, it'll be quite difficult. Then you go a step further, advise, again, after advice, you assure, reassure. This what the crux in writing the story with the fictional characters, whatever we named in this story or prologue. We thought it is for the readers. They can easily pick up. It is not just internal audit providing assurance. The internal audit should have a kind of team with an expert in various fields. Fateh, would you like to add something on this?
No, I think people will be able to relate to a real life situation much better when they visualize through a storyline. That was the thought process that we had when we wanted to conceptualize how an organization, which is probably set in the future, maybe currently or in the future, as to how they will be visualizing and strategizing their technical architecture and the way that they would want to run the business. And in that scenario, what are the risks and what sort of skill sets should an internal auditor have. That was the context in which we wanted to give a sort of a preview or a bird's eye view into how the business would look like, and then probably lead into the concepts of the artificial intelligence and how it plays a role in the internal audit and so on. So that was the context, Aditya, to answer your question.
So the prologue, I would just add the prologue. By reading the prologue itself, people will understand a typical financial service, be a large bank or any type of, it could be NBFC or other MF type of organization. They would understand how, if it is a AI there already there, or they are planning to have a AI, what all the kind of resource and capability they need to have, they need to build. Either they outsource or they have internally within the team. It's a large team at work.
It's true.
Yes, Mr. Raman. See, the other part we also have to understand is we are talking about digital transformation, digital landscape. So there is going to be new risks that are going to emerge as and when we go forward. And I'm sure as an internal auditor, they will have to identify these risks and try to mitigate that. What are the new risks that you feel apart from the normal automotive risk and legal risk that will entail?
That is again a very good question, Aditya. Let me go with even the current element of whatever we look into from the risk perspective, right? Take from the human risk or automation risk or financial strategy. It could be a regulatory risk, for example. If I start on the regulatory risk in India, particularly for AI or even drone, we have a civil aviation kind of rules only apply. We don't have a separate drone related law. Or if you look into AI, we have only an Information Technology Act, though it is good. But there are other countries, take example, the China, Japan, or Germany, US, they are enacting or enacted. There are also several court-related, cases also happening, litigation happening, because of the regulatory requirement. When we say regulatory, already a kind of very specific class or provision to regulatory, in a way it becomes easy. You know what to comply with. You know what you can't step beyond, right? Here you have to be more than careful, and you have to have understand multiple risks, particularly technology risk. AI or algorithm, I would say algorithm is so good. At the same time, it can also lead to several problems. It could be data, it could be privacy. It can, if we are not secured, if we are not sure on the crypto level, for example, it can lead to a kind of a leakage of data, right? That could be an insider or external threat or a collusion. Anything can happen. So you may be ready to, you have to plan, think how sure you are on the litigation. It can also lead to a client-related loss. This role, I would say, best would be AI-related risk framework. We are talking about the ERMs, COSO model, everything, right? It is time we need to look into several type of already known risk, bucket it from the technology or from the AI side, look into what is the additional kind of risk related mitigation efforts we have. Let me say one example. I was talking about the litigation or client related. If something goes wrong, a customer in a bank, because of privacy related violation, customer may file a lawsuit, right? It is not just a regulatory or litigation or legal risk. It could also have impact on the finance side. It can also impact on the strategy side. I would request rather, Partha, would you touch upon something ROI or customer related on the finance side or, from the strategy side?
No, I think the risk dimension has changed, as you have rightly mentioned, because with the use of technology, we are opening up a can of worms also. There are a lot of benefits, no doubt, but at the same time, on the flip side, we also need to be very clear and the speed at which some of these technologies are being deployed. Are we sure that we have the system development lifecycle, the traditional controls, right? So, to what extent are we taking enough precautions before we launch something? Even now, because of the current pandemic, there were a lot of newer features that people have introduced, and very rapidly it has come into play. So when it has come into play so rapidly, there are so many apps that have also come very recently, right? We are facilitating an easier banking experience for the customer. While doing so, are we compromising on data security? Are we compromising on privacy regulations? Are we compromising on are we opening up customer-related information to certain elements for them to misuse? So we do not know. So I think it's important to balance what features that the bank is offering or the financial services institution is offering to the customer vis-a-vis what the risks are. So I think it's important to balance both and also ensure that there are adequate checkpoints which are built into the technology itself, so that the customer experience is good. At the same time, there is an element of assurance that the transactions are fairly secure. From an audit standpoint, when I'm going and auditing, it may also have to be real-time auditing. It cannot be like I audit, say, 3 months later or 6 months later, by which time the damage is already done. So I think many a time the assurance that is required from the auditors also is the question of the agility that they bring it to the process, and the way that we play a role as internal auditors, even at the stage at which some of these processes are put in place to have adequate controls plugged in, so that there are more preventive controls, more automated controls, rather than sort of doing a post-mortem after the damage is done. So I think the audit approach, right from enterprise risk management to risk assessment to an audit planning to an execution, there's going to be an impact throughout wherever technology is involved. So I think that's where I think the internal auditors should also embrace the technology, should create more awareness within the team, should take help from specialists wherever required, and then ensure that the audit process is more proactive, so that there is an assurance at an audit committee level also, or to any of the stakeholders that are involved, including the customers.
Thank you, sir. So one more important thing, I mean, just to give an example, which we came to know through the news, is, for example, Uber uses an app to, make the route at the best possible route and allocate the driver. Now, elsewhere, there is a litigation going on where the drivers feel that, the allocation of the rides is not appropriate. So that is again because of the AI, wherein the routes are allocated, but the drivers feel that, in some way they are not getting the rights. So this is an example of the litigation costs.
Absolutely.
I would add, Aditya and Partha, in the interest of, say, when we talk about risk, I would add something. Currently, though Indian criminal jurisprudence is, talking very clearly about we call intention or mens rea, like, when it is a self-driven car, for example, that is quite popular nowadays in other Western countries, where you will fix if there is a kind of accident. You would have seen the ethics related risk in a tunnel case, that is quite popular. You can Google or you can find out. But in real life, in AI, it can throw some kind of not just ethics related case, but it is more. I would simply say, apart from self-driven car, it could be Anything on AI, if it is not properly, understood, if the data leakage or data related issue, the governance is not managed well, it can lead to all kind of, the circle of risk could be even more. It need not attack only a compliance or regulatory. Eventually, it can impact the background or the bottom line of the company.
Correct. No, I think Raman, one more aspect is in terms of the changing landscape that artificial intelligence poses to audit is something that we spoke about. But in terms of fraud, I think we are also looking at a lot more vulnerabilities in terms of how the current environment of fraudsters might leverage on the technology environment that is in place. So, with your experience on fraud, would you also want to sort of touch upon a couple of aspects that one needs to keep in mind?
Of course. As initially I said, one of the qualification in current digital age of internal auditor, that he or she should be very familiar with um, understanding the fraud vulnerabilities, where it is possible, how frequently they do the fraud heat map process or anti-fraud risk assessment. I would call, like all of us know about the fraud triangle or even the fraud diamond or pentagon, whatever, right? The rationalization, motivation or opportunity, the three elements of fraud triangle. In AI triangle, if you call AI triangle, or we can develop into whatever, pentagon to anything, but at least a triangle, if you look into the business process for which AI is put in, that is the bottom line, that is the crux. You develop digital lifecycle on one side and then digital or data governance on the other side. If we know the controls are placed or controls are, whatever they're assured on the three element, the process or operation control, the digital that includes cyber to all related security control, then data related control, I think organization can smoothly say they can silent to mitigate fraud. See, again, fraud, everyone knows we can't eliminate, we can't say I am a zero fraud organization. I can be a zero tolerant to fraud, not zero fraud organization, but we can mitigate by taking few steps like this.
I think even like what we used to have in an ERP, for instance, where you have an audit tool sitting on top of the ERP, regulating certain transactions or generating certain red flags for the auditor to do a continuous controls monitoring and so on. I think even in this current environment, I think the use of audit tools by the auditor also will have to keep pace with the technology that the organization is having, because at the end of the day, traditional audit techniques of manual verification of records or looking at checkpoints alone may not give them the assurance also. To that extent, I think the auditors also will have to sort of look at forward-looking tools which closely monitor the configuration or the transactions and throw up potential outliers or red flags, so that there can be much more of a closer detection, flagging off, and looking at engagement with the management, engagement with the technology teams to have adequate prevention measures in place. I think that is also another aspect which comes to my mind as we look at more and more technology being embraced by the business. More and more technology will also have to be embraced by the auditors. To that extent, if the auditors will have to impress upon the audit committee to ensure that more budget is allocated to internal audit to invest in technology, they will have to do that also, because that is the biggest challenge. On the one hand, a lot more assurance is required, but auditors are sort of handicapped with the kind of investment that is permitted in the internal audit function. So practically it's a catch-22 situation, but I think one will have to work their way through this by impressing upon the stakeholders the criticality, or that is where I think Aditya touched upon the fact of risk assessment earlier, right? To sort of look at what is it that we are vulnerable on, what is it that there is an exposure, to prevent that or to monitor that exposure, what is the sort of investment that is required from the internal audit. And I think I think it has to be a conversation or a dialogue that needs to happen throughout the process and sort of look at proactive measures. So,
I would just add one more thing to what Partha was just mentioning. One is investment of what we get from the stakeholder, from the management to, continuously update ourselves, our audit process, our audit approach, but also the key thing, like what we said, the current digital age IAs. For example, if we don't understand segregation of duty, we can talk about humans on SOD, but if it is a bot environment, we are talking in AI, bot will go through crisscross all inner critical system. You can have for human SOD and process-wise password, all this kind of control mechanism, but for bot, who will own that? This is a knowledge, first of all, internal auditor to build themselves, then go to the management, okay, this is my risk, or this where I require budget for training my team, training myself. Educating is more important. You have to, gain deeper insight into how technology can play. Again, it could be the risk, could be not easy here, algorithm something written bad or with a kind of a bias, or it go to a kind of implanted or kind of a espionage kind of cases. You provide every data customer to everything, not only you are facing a legal suit, but to the competitor in a golden platter, right? That is the
absolutely.
kind of element we are looking at. So internal auditor need to be aware, enriched with the knowledge.
That is true. No, in fact, even with the current situation where people are working from home, leave alone the advanced automation in terms of artificial intelligence and so on, even currently, we used to traditionally look at virtual desktops, maybe a VPN-based access. Today, the necessity to work remotely has opened up a lot more avenues or of exposure. So when we are looking at that, and also the way we are doing an audit, right? Today we are physically not able to go to a particular location to do an audit. When we are not able to go to a location to do an audit, there are newer methods of audit that are coming into play, like a remote audit or a desktop review, or maybe even a video kind of an audit that is coming into play. Maybe you can also throw some light, Raman, on how do you think
Yeah,
auditors
sure.
should adapt in terms of looking at different audit approaches?
Absolutely. You were mentioning about video audit. See, we all certainly used to be a kind of remote audit or off-site or on-site, looking at going at client site. But with even without AI, also we are kind of through ERP, with whatever dynamic queries or something, you would be able to extract information, run appropriate report, and have a kind of call or do a audit. I go a step further in the virtual world. Why not with a MS Team or Google or Zogo or whatever kind of like to go to meeting, or you can have interact with your client, customer, or whoever it is, or if you're an internal auditor, like we can talk to our branches, talk to our other, if it is a vendor audit, your vendor through your video processing. That is a much better, safer way, I would say, particularly with the travel advisory, which it's not easing down still. It is still, we are in kind of extended lockdown 4, 5. I'm sorry, I don't remember whether we are in 4 or 5, but
That's true.
whatever. So it is much easy because I want to care my employees' safety. I can't, whether flights are allowed, trains are allowed. It is both
That's true.
sides, right? My client and customer, they want distancing. At the same time, as an auditor, I have my promises, my assurance to my audit committee and management. How I do is typical take a video audit, for example.
Yeah, I think that way the challenges that one is facing, whether be it an external auditor, a quality auditor, an IT auditor, or an internal auditor, or even to do an investigation. To do an investigation, the challenges are even more because you would need evidence to demonstrate that there is something that has gone wrong, and to also prove that something has occurred, and to evidence that something has occurred which will facilitate action. That becomes even more difficult. Whereas, okay, regular audit, fine, to a certain extent, we are also fine tuning our audit approach I'm sure Aditya can add here as well in terms of the different audit approaches that we are currently adopting. Aditya, would you like to add a couple of things?
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Partha. One is regarding the audit procedures. It will also lead to how we are going to ultimately document whatever we have done. That is also very critical. For example, I'm doing a review with my team, or I'm doing a review with my with a client. How much can that be recorded, and how much that can be actually saved for the future retrieval? That is one. Second thing is, as auditors, we'll also have to upgrade not our skill sets to understand how these tools actually work and how effectively that it be used to meet the standards of auditing, which I'm sure will also undergo a change over a period of time as we adopt new technologies, etc. The third very important aspect is also to meet the regulatory requirements and the review requirements which are coming out because of a lot of scams and things like that. How prepared are we in all these circumstances?
That is true. I think even we are subject to, as an audit, as an internal audit team, we are subject to quality reviews. We are subject to external reviews. We need to also give assurance to the external auditors. I think then audit evidence plays a significant role there, and especially when we are doing sort of a remote on-site, off-site, or a remote or a video audit. To what extent are we going to ensure audit evidence, work papers, digitization of that, substantiating that in the audit report? It's a challenging world. I think it's quite interesting, very dynamic. I think if we are going to get bogged down by the challenges, we can. But the other option is to look at this challenge with a lot of positivity and embrace the change and drive the audit process with the vision that we always thought that we will do 5 years down the line. We have to do it now. We are forced to do it now. So, and the embracing of that has happened so fast that some of maybe we need to redefine our goals or redefine our own vision. I think to that extent, it is an exciting journey, as I would say. So,
I would just add up one line to what Partha was saying. When we are embracing on technology or in the new normal, see, all the AGMs they need to do in a kind of a very big hall, even cricket stadium, everything. We already adopted in the 3 months how to conduct a video way of conducting a AGM, right? Every SEBI to RBI, everyone now says you are okay with that. So we started adopting as internal auditor, we need to go a step further, taking into all technical or technology related disruption, understand, play our role even faster, better. Yes.
yeah, I think that's good.
It has been a very nice interaction between the authors. Very kind of you, and thanks a lot for taking us through the various technology techniques and other things. Now, I would request our Senior Vice President of IIA India, Mr. Tyagarajan Kumar, to formally release the book. At the same time, I request Aditya to show up the book cover page on the screen. Over to Mr. TK.
Good evening, KV. Good evening, Raman, Partha, my good friend Aditya. Happy to see this work coming out of all three of you under guidance of KV. Thankful to KV for bringing things out. The only thing is AI in financial services probably is slightly a restricted title, which probably AI in internal audit would have generated a lot more interest, is what I'm thinking as I'm reflecting on this. I'm sure the content what you three of you have put together is really very, very good, and that really reflects the true spirit of Chennai, which is always had that mathematical and statistical capacity in them, and I see going through that detailed algorithms. You discussed about algorithms, statistics, and correlations, and regressions, and chi-square, and how do we use them all in audit and in fraud detection and fraud prevention. Really has come from you, particularly in the context where we were just had Mr. Sheshadri passing away a few days ago from the Chennai Mathematical Institute, which was widely covered in the press. And I'm really glad to see, really mathematics and statistics in audit, which is also an area of interest for me. And congratulations to you and for bringing it out. I'm sure this is a very, very welcome addition to the audit community, and it will be widely used. As I mentioned, I'll work with KB to make sure that it is for a wider audience than for a restricted industry, one industry. AI in internal audit probably is a much larger piece which will be useful to all the industries. You have all the basic pieces in your book. I'm sure it will be very useful. And congratulations. Thank you very much. And with this few words, I would like to release this book. And KV, thank you once again. Congratulations. Look forward to more creative suggestions and inputs from Chennai leading the publications on behalf of IIA India.
Thank you, Mr. Tyagarajan Kumar, for briefly touching upon the various aspects in the book and then formally releasing the book today. In fact, we have placed the details about the book in the website of IIA India also. And also we have sent to all the IIA members, nearly more than 4,000 people, the details about the book and content, etc. So it is available for sale at IIA India office. Anyone can send order through email and it will be sent to their addresses. So with this, I thank and I request Mr. Partha to give a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. I think, thank you, Mr. Vidyadharan. Thank you, Mr. Ramarao. I think it has been a good opportunity for the three of us to interact once more, Raman and Aditya, because this is the second time that we are collaborating for a publication this year. And I should thank Institute of Internal Auditors, Institute of Internal Auditors India, to have given us the opportunity to collaborate and bring out what has been very close to our heart in terms of sharing our knowledge, and sort of we also gain in the process in terms of doing more research, getting more knowledge and insight about the various developments in the field, and as internal auditors, how prepared we should be to embrace the change. I think change is a way of life, as we have very much seen in the last 3 months, even more so. But I think it's important for us to embrace technology as an enabler as we go along. So to that extent, both the earlier book, the data analytics one, as well as the one now on artificial intelligence, has given us the opportunity to sort of structure our thoughts for the internal audit community in a form of a guide and a primer. So we look forward to more such opportunities to collaborate with IIA in future. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And
Sarde. Yeah, proceed, TK.
No, go ahead, Kevin.
I would like to thank everyone, including IIA India President Mr. Ramarao, for giving initial thoughts about the book, and then Mr. TK, Senior Vice President of IIA India, for formally releasing the book, and all the three authors. Immense thanks to all of you, Mr. Raman Narasimhan, Mr. A.R. Patsardi, and Mr. Aditya Kumar. We will be from the publications committee. We'll bring out more such useful guidance books for the internal audit fraternity in India. You can expect more from us. Thank you very much. Thank you all the members who have joined the webinar.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm really impressed with the academic qualification and the stretch which all three of you have. It's really impressive. And
thank you, sir.
True.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that shows in the efforts you're putting in your effort. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.